Today I'll be talking about imagination, understanding, will, and order. And they're all very fun. And we've all heard about imagination. We talk about imagination from when we're little kids. Often imagination, we think of it as, well, it's the thing that artists do. Somebody who has a great imagination can paint pictures or write music, write poetry. That's what we think of as somebody who has a great imagination. But actually, imagination is something we are using all the time. Albert Einstein said, imagination is everything. It is the preview of life's coming attractions. I never really grasped the enormity of that statement until I got into New Thought. But imagination is the preview. Like, we are seeing things in our imagination, and then we're inspired to create. Or we're imagining something maybe we don't want to happen. See, we're imagining all sorts of things. We plan things in our imagination. I had to use my imagination to find something to wear this morning. And my husband will say, yeah, she tried really hard. But we use our imagination to plan out a birthday party. We use our imagination when we are dwelling on a worst case scenario, right? We're like, think ahead of time how badly something could turn out. We may fantasize about what it might be like to take a vacation in Hawaii or Solvang or Sedona or Anchorage. We might imagine what it would be like to be in those different places. All of that happens in our imagination, all of it. Charles Fillmore said, it is through our imagination, that the formless, which is pure source energy, takes form. The formless, pure source energy takes form, and that form is our life. That is our life. It is our physical body. It is everything we're experiencing up until this moment. That is form. So there is a creative force that is at work all the time in our life. And it's the imagination giving it the direction on what to do. You see, there's a quality of spirit, and it has the urge to continue expressing itself through all of its creations. Now, this can look like life creating life. Like a flower, a bee will land on the flower and pick up some of the pollen, and then go to another flower, and it spreads pollen around, and there are other little flowers then that pop up, right? So a flower grows other flowers. Or the acorn tree, the oak tree, drops an acorn, which grows into another oak tree. Humans make babies, but that's not the only thing we create in our life. We create music, we create apps for our phones, we create clothing designs, we create community, we create harmony in our home, we create loving relationships. We are creating all kinds of things. That is how source energy is always working through us, right? Because it's continuing its self-expression through us and into our activities all the time, whether we're in joy or sorrow. It is always at work through us. So our imagination is giving that energy something to do. Our imagination is giving a creative energy that creates things through our life. It is giving it a form to take, no matter what we're thinking. Now, luckily, not everything that pops into our head is something that we create. Otherwise, the sanctuary would be filled with puppies and baby elephants and cars and hot rods and a popcorn maker, right? So, Ernest Holmes, though, says this about imagination. He says that imagination, used in the creative capacity, carries with it feelings and conviction. So we're imagining something, and we're feeling it really strongly, and we're knowing that it's going to happen. Now, we can do this with something fun, but we also do this with worst case scenarios. That it is so powerful that we can actually stress out about something before it happens and feel the stress and anxiety in our body as if it's true. We do that all through our imagination. So our feeling and feeling it with that, knowing that we're going to create it, is how that formless takes form through our imagination. We have done it already up to this point. We've been doing it all the time. It's our life. the life that we have right now, was the formless taking form through our imagination. Even those things that we don't want. Because source energy, this creative urge that creates more of itself through the things it's already created, which that's us, we're a thing it's already created, it doesn't say yes or no to us. Okay, any more than if you were baking a cake, well, it says yes to us. I'm not going to say that. It says yes to us. If you're baking a cake and you're reading the recipe and you decided to throw in a handful of cayenne pepper, the oven is not going to say, no, don't do that. You're going to be so sorry. The oven will not say that to you. The bowl that you're mixing things in will not tell you that's a bad idea. Your oven just bakes whatever you put in it. And so source energy is just a creative yes, yes energy creating through us. So sometimes we're creating things we don't want because in our imagination, we're feeling it with conviction. And we do that a lot with things that we don't want in our life. Now, what happens is we operate out of something. When we're unconsciously, when we're on autopilot in our head, we are doing something called the mental tendency. And it's a tendency to behave a certain way without thinking about how we're behaving. This is why someone who is a glass half empty kind of person, they'll see life as a glass half empty kind of life. Right? They're going to be a little more pessimistic. They're not going to see the opportunities. They're going to see instead, oh, that probably wouldn't even work out. I don't even know why I'd go there. Because that's a mental tendency that they're operating out of. It's just habitual. They're not thinking about what they're thinking about. Whereas a person who has a glass half full kind of attitude, they'll be a little more optimistic and they will see opportunities maybe where other people wouldn't. They might think, yeah, what the heck, I'll just give it a try. I mean, what's it going to hurt? Okay, so they will see life differently. They'll live their life differently based on that method of thinking. This is why in our imagination, sometimes when we're focused on things we don't want, we're still creating that in our lives. But luckily, it takes a lot of energy to do that. Ernest Holmes said to learn how to think is to learn how to live. For our thoughts go into a medium that is infinite in its ability to do and to be. Our thoughts go into a medium, which is source, God, right? That infinite energy. Our thoughts are all going into that. It's important that we think about what's going on in our imagination. Now, luckily, with the 12 powers, we have support and help in that, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So life is unfolding through us based on our thoughts and our feelings and our conviction, because that's all happening in our imagination. That's all happening in our imagination. Our thoughts and our feelings and our convictions have something going on in our imagination too. So our imagination is where we create a life, but our imagination is also where we are receiving divine instruction, inspiration, guidance, visions, our dreams. We see signs, and it's our imagination that points out the sign to us. We have a symbolic kind of encounter, right? That is all also happening in our imagination. Now, often people will say, tell me if you've heard this. That was only your imagination. Yeah? Okay. Yeah, I see most everybody nodding their head. Yeah, it's just your imagination. When I was deciding to do this series on the 12 powers, I like doing series, right? The Rainbow series is like my favorite series to do, but I just love to do series. And I had asked that question, what's the next series I'm going to do? What is the series? Well, I found my book, The 12 Powers of Man, and I realized then I had had a dream about 12 stars, that I had 12 stars. And then I see the book, The 12 Powers of Man, and I was like, whoa, that was weird. Like I had that dream about the 12 stars, that's the 12 Powers of Man. Well, then I open up the book and the inside has a picture of the outline of a human and little stars all in the body where each of the powers resides. 12 stars. And so, of course, I was just like, right? Thank you for my answer. When my kids were really little, my son was maybe 3, my daughter was about 1, we were living in our new house, and we were outside in the backyard, and I just had this vision pop into my head where my son was crazy playing with a stick, and he poked my daughter in the eye with a stick. And so I was like, oh, I'm kind of a helicopter mom, and I kind of like worry about stuff. So I'm just like, okay, Deanna, just don't worry about it. Don't worry about that. Don't put that out there into the universe. So my daughter was just standing here. My son was like way over there. I don't even know why that popped into my head, but it did. Well, now my son suddenly is running toward us with a stick. He's got a stick in his hand. Now this all happens really fast. I just put my hand in front of my daughter's face. At the same time, he pokes me with a stick, right? Because I had that vision, I kind of just did that before I even thought about it, right? So visions bring us information. It has to come through our imagination, because God's not going to write a note. Right now, we may receive a note that like actually is a vision for us in a way, or see a book or a picture or something, but it's our imagination that we process it through. So our imagination is a very, very powerful tool. It's not just something that an artist is going to use, unless your definition for artist is a creator of a life. And that's what you all are. That's what we all are, is a creator of a life. We're the artist of our life. So our imagination is where we create a life, where the formless takes form, but it's also where we receive inspiration. Okay? Now, understanding is the next of the 12 powers. And understanding helps us to process some of the stuff that comes through our imagination. Understanding helps us to learn what something means, or to put pieces together. We're putting pieces together. Sometimes we can act out of blind faith and we'll get okay results, but not the kind of results that we will get if we have understanding as part of the way we live our life. Now, we're a spiritual being in a body, and we can do things that help us to bring more understanding into our life. We can ask a question. We can start off by asking a question. And you can ask the universe any question you want. What would it look like if I, had better health? What would it look like if I took a vacation? What would it look like if I picked up a new hobby? Okay, you just put the question out there, but you ask the question, because then you have to receive. The universe is responsive. So you're giving to the universe by asking it a question. It has to give back to you by giving you an answer. So we ask something, but then we have to perceive our environment, because now we're going to receive something. But if we receive a dream, we might just say, oh, it's just a dream, just my imagination. So now we want to be open to perceiving what's in our environment so we can actually receive something. And when we receive it, then we can do something with the information. We comprehend it. That is what gives us understanding. And with that understanding, we can now make a decision. Now, wisdom, I talked about wisdom already. Wisdom is a little different than understanding. Although, like in the Bible, they're used interchangeably. And I thought the story of King Solomon receiving the gift of an understanding heart, I thought that was all about wisdom. But it was about understanding, which is a little different. And it's about the power of the heart. Now, wisdom is an intuitive knowing. You just intuitively know something, but you may not put the pieces together about why it's important. Like when I first decided to go off sugar, okay, that was wisdom. That was an intuitive knowing. It's like, yeah, it'd probably be just best to go off sugar. But then I started doing some research. I read this book called Bright Line Eating, and she went into the science of the dangers of sugar. I mean, not only do they cause damage in our brain, they cause cellular damage, they could be the precursor to dementia and Alzheimer's, but they cause all kinds of other wonky reactions in the body. So I read that, and then I had an epiphany. I was like, I saw my own symptoms in the studies of sugar toxicity. I had an aha moment. There's the difference between understanding and wisdom. Wisdom, you have the knowing. With understanding, you have the reason why. Okay, you get the epiphany. All right, so we can do things to get understanding. So we ask a question. Like I asked the question about, what should my next sermon series be? Then we perceive our environment, which includes what's going on in our imagination. I had a dream about 12 stars, which I didn't remember until I saw the book, The 12 Powers. Okay, so there I perceived my environment. I'm perceiving what I see out there. Then I receive the information. Oh, 12 powers, 12 stars, I had the dream. Oh my gosh, that's so amazing, that's wild. I comprehended it. I did ask for a new sermon series. There we go. Now, I didn't have to act on it. My next series could have been the 4 agreements. But all of that coming together, because it had understanding, gave me the aha moment that comes with understanding. And I really got a lot more out of the 12 powers of man than I had ever gotten before. I was just ready for it. All right, so that is what understanding does for it. It works with imagination to bring us that aha kind of moments. Then will. Okay, we get to will, capital W. And I don't think anybody ever likes talking about will, right? Because it sounds like, oh, the universe will boss me around. I won't have any more freedom. It's really not that. Will, okay, if you look at the imagination, through the imagination, the formless takes form. But our imagination can be all over the place. All over the place. It is will, capital W, that helps us to command what it is we want in our life. Okay, we imagine what we want, and then the will commands it. In the beginning was the Word. God said, let there be light. Let there be light. So there was an idea in divine mind of our cosmos, and then there was the command that created it, right? The command. We are teaching ourselves through the 12 powers. We are teaching ourselves to be receptive to divine guidance and to receive that communication so that we're focusing on what we want to create in our life. That's what this is all about. Teaching us to stop focusing on what we don't want, to stop fretting about all the bad things that may happen. Okay, that's what the 12 powers do for us. It's a step-by-step process. Charles Fillmore said the 12 powers help us to move into regeneration, which is his way of saying move into greater well-being for ourselves every day. Move into a greater feeling of wholeness in our lives every day. Move into the next best version of ourselves every day. But it takes practice. It takes practice. Now, will is one of the major things that helps us to get that practice, because in our imagination, we're creating. What are we focusing on? Are we commanding? Let there be light, right? Which is whatever desired outcome you want, okay? Just imagine that. Do we command that? Let there be light, and then what do we do? Was that enough light? Or was that too much? You know, this one time I tried to command light, and I created a vortex instead. And it started when I was in kindergarten. There's that teacher, and she said I can't color a bear pink. It all started with her. I am never going to be able to. Whatever. We do this all the time. We create something in our imagination that we really want to see happen in our life, and then we are looking at all the reasons why we can't do that. Okay? We imagine a great outcome for ourselves, and then we immediately go into, oh, that would be really hard. What was I thinking? I'm not tall enough to do that. Right? Everybody always said I would never be able to do that because I use a pink crayon all the time. Right? That's what we do. Now, this is the power of will with a capital W. Keep us focused on what we want. To keep us focused on what we want. We're going to face obstacles. We're going to have perceived obstacles. But will help us to stay focused on our desired outcome so that we're seeing God as the everywhere present God. So that we're seeing the activity of Spirit in all things. If we try to use our personal will or our willpower, that's focusing on the problem. Anybody who's ever gone on a diet and tried to use willpower? The willpower is, don't eat the taco, don't eat the taco, don't eat the taco. That's focusing on what we don't want to do. Where will, with a capital W, is focusing on what we do want. Strong, healthy body. My joints don't ache anymore. I'm going to be able to get rid of those pants I don't like because they'll be too big. We're focusing on what we do want, okay, when we use will with a capital W. That's divine will. That's divine will. Because Spirit wants for us our brightest good, the thing that brings us the most happiness, the thing that brings us growth and goodness. That's what Spirit wants for us. Remember, Jesus said, I didn't come here so life, people could have life. I came in so they could have it abundantly. Abundantly. Kind, loving relationships, a home and a hearth, community to be part of, the things that we need and enjoy around us. That is life abundantly. That is life abundantly. Ernest Holmes said he said something about will, and I think it is the most brilliant thing I've ever heard said about will. He says, at the very root of the whole matter of creating our desired outcome, we find that the creative power of the universe does not create through will, but through imagination, imaging, feeling, and knowing. To suppose that God must will things to happen would be to suppose that God had some opposing force to contend with. Now, when we're trying to will things into happen, we're looking at an opposing force in our life. We're looking at the obstacle. All those tacos are in my way, right? That's will. That's our personal will. Okay, divine will. He says imagination is creative. Will is directive. Will is directive. It's the command. Let there be light. Not, it's awfully dark in here. What are we going to do about that? Is there somebody else in here who's made light before? Okay, that's not it. That's not where we want to keep going all the time with our desired outcome. Let there be light. That is what we do when we are creating. Focus on our desired outcome. And then command it to be, instead of commanding all the reasons why we can't do what we want to do. So divine will requires us to have faith and trust in Spirit. That's why it's called surrendering, because we're trusting that Spirit will clear the obstacles. We're trusting that Spirit will lead the way. We're trusting that there's that within that knows what to do, and it compels us to act on what it knows, because it knows what to do and how to do it. That's why we surrender to divine will. We're not giving up our free will by surrendering to divine will. We're giving up focusing on the obstacles to having what we want in our life. That's what we're giving up. Let there be light. The next thing then is order, divine order. So we have imagination and understanding, we have will, then we have divine order. Now I love the idea of order. I love order. It's our ability to balance things, to organize, to put things in a sequence, or to let things go. That's what order is. But what order does is it helps us to establish harmony. That's what we want, is harmony. The entire universe is based on a system of order. The solar system is in a system of order. That's why the planets rotate how they do. That's not why they're not shooting off into space, right? That's why we're all still here in a clump for like many billion years. I'm not a sciencey person, but billions of years, right? That's why everything is still here in our solar system, because of the cosmic order of what's happening in the solar system. Our planet is based on a system of order, okay, how natural law works. Our body is based on a system of order. The things within this body function in a specific way, a certain order. And we know that when things get out of functioning, out of order in our body, we feel bad. We might get sick. We might be moving into disease, because things are meant to function in a certain way. Charles Fillmore said, "We are not to be liberated by suppression of a sense or by a violent overcoming, but by a steady, step-by-step demonstration over every error." That is the 12 powers. That's how we use the 12 powers. Things are done in a certain order in our lives. Things are done in a certain order. If I know when I go home and take a look at my kitchen today, it's going to need some attention. I don't know that I'll be the one to do it, but you look at your kitchen, right? You go into your kitchen Thanksgiving evening, and what you're going to see is dirty plates everywhere and food, right? So there's a certain order to the process of getting your kitchen back in order. You wouldn't put all the dirty plates away and then fill a sink up with water and then like go watch TV and then add some soap to cold water. You wouldn't do that. Cleaning our kitchen comes in a certain order, and then we have harmony in the kitchen. And that's our whole life. That is our whole life, doing things in a certain order. Our spiritual path is about gaining understanding so that things are unfolding into our life for us that are bringing us our next brightest good. That's what all of these powers do together. They're not here to like boss us around or make us feel limited. They're here to free us. They're here to free us. That's why there's the affirmative prayer process. That's why affirmative prayer helps us to create more goodness in our life. That's why there's the 12 powers working together. And if we don't get it perfect the first time, that's okay. If you remember, Charles Fillmore said, it's just a steady, step-by-step demonstration over every error. Just doing our best every day. Doing our best every day. See, there are no spiritual shortcuts. Now, in the spiritual community, sometimes I've been in groups where they're like, yeah, we're going to take a shortcut. We're going to do the spiritual shortcut. But you could not. You would not create a vision board with your dream house on it, okay? But then never do the affirmative prayer process. Never ask for guidance. You wouldn't do this beautiful vision board with your dream home and then never, ever go looking for a house or drive around the neighborhoods that you want to live in. You would not create this beautiful vision board and then in your head, over and over, think things like, I hate moving. Moving is really hard. I don't even feel like packing. I hate packing. I hate having to move and unpack things. And everything's heavy and my body's tired. How am I supposed to even manage all this? What am I thinking? That is doing things out of order. That is not utilizing divine will. That is not focusing our imagination on what it is we want to create in our life. So we're not utilizing the 12 powers. We're not creating harmony in our life. It's possible to move into a house, and it's possible to get things packed with some help. Right? It's possible to do these things. Now, some things we have to put forth effort, including practicing the affirmative prayer process, practicing these 12 powers. We have to put forth some effort. You know, even Jesus used to have to spend like the whole night praying about stuff sometimes, right? I mean, even Jesus had to do that. So there are no spiritual shortcuts. No spiritual shortcuts. You've heard of Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. I Googled that this morning just to make sure it was still the #1 piece of classical music, and it is still, after all these years. All of the notes on that music sheet, is it called the staff? I think it's called the staff. They're done in a certain order. You would not just toss a bunch of musical notes onto a staff, a music staff, and expect a symphony that is still #1 around the world all these years later. Now, your life is also a symphony. You wouldn't just like throw a bunch of random stuff out there, right? Your life is a work of art. And using the imagination, using your imagination to focus on the beautiful things that you want in your life, and then asking the universe, like, what would it look like for me to have this? And then perceiving your environment so you can receive that answer. And then letting it unfold, right? Comprehending it, having that aha moment about the next thing to do. Right? That's what we are meant to be doing. You've heard that everything is in divine order, right? Well, it is in divine order when we are allowing ourselves to act by putting things in divine order, right? To act in alignment, in accordance with the 12 powers. We command it. That's what we do. We use our imagination. We have understanding. We command about our life. Let there be light. Let there be light. And create your symphony. So until next time, remember, you are the activity of spirit in a body. You are the heart and the hands of spirit in this world. You are a soul designed for growth and goodness. In everything you do, you are blessed. And so it is. So it is. Thank you very much.